His mother looked me in the eyes at their family dinner and said, "Girls like you don't belong at this table." She said it so calmly, like she wasn't breaking something inside me. She had no idea that one day, this very table would be mine. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Ava Mitchell. Before all of this happened, I lived a simple life in Ohio. I worked long shifts as a nurse, not because it was easy, but because I loved helping people. I never thought my life would cross paths with someone from a powerful, wealthy family. But then I met Ethan Caldwell. Ethan wasn't like the stereotypes you hear about rich men. At least not at first. He was warm, friendly, and incredibly charming. He liked that I worked hard, and he said it inspired him. When he told me he wanted me to meet his family, I felt nervous, but also hopeful. If he loved me, maybe his family would too. I remember the day of that dinner. I spent hours getting ready, making sure I looked respectful but still like myself. Ethan kept telling me, "Don't worry, Mom is strict but kind. She'll come around." I believed him. I trusted him. I thought he knew his mother better than anyone. When we arrived at the Caldwell home, the first thing I noticed was how big everything was. The driveway alone was longer than the street I grew up on. The house looked like something from a magazine, polished, perfect, intimidating. I felt small walking through those doors, but I kept reminding myself that Ethan chose me for who I was, not what I had. Margaret Caldwell greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She looked me up and down like she was inspecting a stain on her favorite dress. But I kept trying. I offered small conversation, polite questions, anything to make a connection. It didn't work. Every word I said seemed to annoy her more. During dinner, she barely acknowledged me. When she did, it was only to correct me or question me. She asked about my job like nursing was something embarrassing. She made comments about people from simple backgrounds. Ethan sat right beside me, but he stayed quiet. That silence hurt more than her words. Then came the moment I will never forget. She leaned forward, looked straight at me, and said, "Girls like you don't belong at this table." Her voice was soft, but the meaning cut deep. The room went quiet. My hands shook under the table, and every instinct in me wanted to get up and leave. I didn't say anything then. I just swallowed the pain, smiled politely, and tried to make it through the night. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment, those 7 words, would change everything. It was the beginning of a journey I never expected, a journey that would eventually bring me back to that same table, but in a very different way. Here is your 500-word continuation, simple English, no repetition from outline 1, smooth, emotional, and fully consistent with the story. From the moment dinner continued, I could feel Margaret studying every move I made. Her eyes scanned my clothes like she was checking for flaws. I had worn a neat dress, nothing flashy, nothing careless, but the way she looked at me made it feel like I had shown up covered in dust. She asked where I bought it, not out of curiosity, but as if she was trying to guess the price and judge whether it was cheap enough for someone like me. She asked about my work again, but this time the tone was different. It wasn't curiosity, it was dismissal. When I told her I worked in a hospital, she sighed and made a comment about how demanding jobs often lead to neglected homes. Ethan didn't say a word. He kept his eyes on his plate like the conversation had nothing to do with him. At one point, Margaret leaned back in her chair and said loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "Ethan always brings home these temporary phases. He'll settle down when he's ready for someone of his own class." She didn't look at me directly, but everyone knew who she was talking about. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I waited for Ethan to correct her, to defend me, to say something, anything. But he stayed silent, as if agreeing quietly or too scared to confront her. That silence stung more than her words. Dinner went on awkwardly. People tried to change the topic, but the damage was already done. I kept reminding myself to stay calm and polite, but inside, something was breaking. I had never felt that unwanted before, not because of who I was, but because of who I wasn't. Not wealthy, not from their circles, not raised in a house with chandeliers and heirloom china. After dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I passed by a group of relatives standing near the hallway. I didn't mean to listen, but Margaret's voice was unmistakable. "She doesn't deserve a seat at the Caldwell table," she said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. My heart dropped. Hearing it directly, without filters, without pretense, made it real in a way her earlier comments hadn't. Another woman agreed with her, saying Ethan needed someone polished. Someone like them. I stood there frozen for a moment, trying to gather myself. It wasn't just that she disliked me. It was that she genuinely believed I was beneath them, like I was some unwanted visitor who had wandered into the wrong room. When I returned to the dining room, Ethan was laughing with his cousin, completely unaware of the storm inside me. He looked at me and asked if I was okay, but I could see he wasn't really paying attention. Not to my face, not to my feelings, not to what had just happened. That night was the first crack in our relationship. Not because of Margaret's cruelty. I could have handled that, but because Ethan chose silence. He chose comfort over defending me. He chose peace at the table over my dignity. And that was his first betrayal. Ethan wasn't the same after that dinner. It was like something inside him had shifted. He didn't call as often, he stopped asking about my day, and whenever I talked about work, he acted bored or irritated. Before, he used to say he admired my dedication. Now he made small comments like, maybe one day you won't have to work so much. Or, my mom thinks nurses have it too hard. Maybe she's right. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself he was just stressed, that everyone goes through phases. But it wasn't a phase. It was a slow, steady distancing, like he was pulling himself away 1 inch at a time. One evening, as we were having dinner at my apartment, he brought it up directly. "Ava, have you ever thought about leaving nursing?" he asked, like he was asking something simple. I looked at him, confused. "Why would I do that?" He shrugged. "You'd fit in better with my family if you had a different lifestyle. Something less demanding." It felt like he was repeating someone else's thoughts, not his own. I didn't even need to guess whose. "I love my job," I said calmly. "I'm not quitting." He frowned. And that's when I realized he wasn't suggesting it, he was expecting it. My answer didn't satisfy him, and from that moment, Margaret pushed even harder. She invited Ethan to events, but made sure I wasn't included. She made comments that got back to him, little jabs about me being unprepared for high society. Ethan didn't defend me. If anything, he started agreeing with her. The distance grew wider. Soon he was spending more time at work, saying he had late-night meetings or team dinners. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. But the signs were there, less affection, fewer calls, a different tone in his voice. One night, while he was in the shower at my place, his phone lit up with a long message. I wasn't trying to spy, but the screen didn't lock right away. The name at the top was Julia, a coworker he had mentioned once or twice. The message was emotional, flirtatious, almost intimate. She said she wished he was with her instead of stuck in another exhausting night. She also wrote that she loved how he opened up to her about everything. My stomach sank. My hands shook. When he came out of the bathroom, I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look guilty. Instead, he said, "You've been so stressed lately, Ava. It's been hard for me too. You make everything feel heavy." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He betrayed me, and somehow he twisted it into being my fault. All the moments he brushed me off, all the silence, all the coldness. It suddenly made sense. I realized in that moment that the person I loved wasn't the person standing in front of me. He had chosen someone else emotionally, and he had chosen to blame me rather than face what he had done. I walked away that night. Not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly, knowing the relationship was beyond repair. My heart was broken, but deep down I knew I needed to rebuild, not cling to something that was already gone. And that was the moment I decided to start over. Not for Ethan. Not for his family. For myself. Here is your 500-word continuation. Simple English, consistent, emotional, and with no repetition from Outline 3. Walking away from Ethan left an emptiness in me, but it also gave me space to breathe again. For the first time in months, my days weren't filled with waiting for someone else's attention or approval. Instead, I threw myself into my work. My shifts were long, but focusing on patience helped quiet the thoughts that kept trying to pull me back into the pain. I realized I had spent so much energy trying to fit into someone else's world that I had stopped growing in my own. So little by little, I rebuilt my routine. I picked up extra classes, stayed later to learn new procedures, and pushed myself to study again. When one of my supervisors suggested I pursue advanced certification, I took it seriously. I applied for a program that would allow me to specialize and eventually move into leadership positions. Going back to school wasn't easy. I was tired, emotionally drained, and dealing with the remains of a heartbreak that still hit me on quiet nights. But the work gave me purpose. Every step forward reminded me that I was more than what Ethan or his mother believed about me. I was capable, strong, and driven, qualities I had forgotten while trying to fit into their expectations. It was during this time that I met Dr. Lucas Bennett. He wasn't like anyone I had worked with before. Lucas was the hospital director, a man who carried himself with calm confidence but treated everyone, from interns to senior staff, like they mattered. The first time he approached me, it wasn't because of my past or my personal struggles. It was because he noticed how dedicated I was, even on exhausting days. "You push through," he said once after watching me help a tough patient. "Most people get worn down. You get stronger." Those words stayed with me. It wasn't praise meant to flatter. It was recognition. Honest, straightforward recognition. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Lucas started guiding me, not in a controlling way, but in a supportive, steady way. He shared advice, helped me see my own potential, and encouraged me to apply for opportunities one would have ignored before. He became a mentor, someone who genuinely believed in my abilities without expecting anything in return. The more I worked with him, the more I realized how much I had been shrinking myself in my previous relationship. Lucas didn't make me feel small. He made me feel capable. He treated me as an equal, someone whose voice mattered in every discussion. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. As months passed, my confidence slowly returned. I wasn't fully healed yet, but I wasn't broken either. I began taking care of my own needs, setting boundaries, and choosing myself over anything that drained me. The guilt, shame, and hurt from the Caldwells started to fade. I still remembered what happened, but the sting was weaker now. I was building a new version of myself, someone more focused, independent, and sure of her worth. And I didn't know it yet, but this new path would eventually lead me right back to the world I had walked away from. Only this time, I would be stronger than ever. A few months after I settled into my new routine, things at the hospital began to change for me in ways I never expected. All the extra work, studying, and training I had pushed myself through started to show. My supervisors noticed, the staff noticed, and eventually the hospital board noticed. Before long, I was promoted to help lead several major medical programs, roles I once thought were out of reach. The work was intense, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I wasn't living in anyone's shadow. I wasn't trying to meet anyone's standards but my own. And people respected me for it. Every meeting, every patient case, every training session made me feel stronger and more certain of who I was becoming. During one of our meetings, Lucas shared something I hadn't heard before. He mentioned the hospital's long history with major donors. When he said the Caldwell family name, my body froze for a second. I didn't react on the outside, but inside, old memories tried to rise. I kept listening, hoping the topic would pass quickly. But Lucas continued explaining how their foundation funded large parts of the hospital's expansion and research programs. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to bring my personal history into my professional space. So I kept my face calm and focused, pretending the name meant nothing. As far as Lucas knew, it did. A week later, Lucas called me into his office. He had a serious but warm expression, the kind he used when he had something meaningful to say. I sat down, feeling a little nervous, unsure of what was coming. He didn't waste time. "Ava, the board is looking for a new chief operations officer," he said. "And I want to nominate you." For a moment, I didn't even understand the words. Coup. A position that oversaw nearly everything in the hospital except the medical side. A role that required leadership, vision, ethics, and the ability to handle pressure. My heart thumped hard in my chest. "Me?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "You've earned it. You've shown leadership without ever demanding recognition. You see people. You stay steady under pressure. That's the kind of person we need." I didn't know what to say. No one had ever believed in me that way. Not Ethan, not his family, not anyone from that world. But Lucas did. And he wasn't doing it out of pity or kindness. He saw something in me I had worked hard to build. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. "The position will require working closely with the Caldwell Foundation," he added. "They're part of the philanthropic board. Margaret Caldwell still holds influence there." My breath caught. For a second, the room felt smaller. Hearing her name again, knowing she was connected to this new path, made the past feel closer than I wanted it to be. But I didn't flinch. I didn't show even a hint of hesitation. Instead, I straightened my back and nodded. "I'm ready for the challenge." I accepted the nomination that day, Not out of revenge, not to revisit old wounds, but because I deserved the opportunity. I had worked for it. I had earned it. And I wasn't going to let the ghost of a painful memory stop me from stepping into a future I had built with my own hands. What I didn't know was just how deeply this new role would pull me back into the world I thought I had escaped. The past wasn't done with me yet, but this time, I wasn't the same woman they once judged. I was stronger, wiser, and finally in a place of power. The first major meeting with the Caldwell Foundation was scheduled only a week after I accepted the nomination. I spent the morning reviewing documents, preparing notes, and reminding myself that this was just another professional setting. Still, a small part of me felt the weight of what I was walking into. I wasn't going as someone's girlfriend this time. I wasn't there to be judged or compared. I was stepping in as a leader. When I entered the boardroom, several members were already seated. The room was large, filled with polished wood-glass walls, and the kind of atmosphere that demanded confidence. I greeted everyone calmly, took my seat, and opened my folder. I didn't know if Margaret would be attending, but I expected the possibility. What I didn't expect was my body's reaction when the door finally opened. Margaret walked in, dressed in her usual elegant style, carrying herself with the same confidence she had always worn like armor. But the moment her eyes landed on me, she stopped in place. Her expression froze, her grip tightened on her folder, and for a second, she looked genuinely shaken. She hadn't expected to see me here. Not sitting at the table, not holding a leadership position, not being introduced as the new nominee for COO. I didn't look away. I offered a polite, professional smile, nothing more. No bitterness, no satisfaction, just calm control. She blinked a few times and slowly made her way to her chair, but the confidence she entered with was already gone. As the meeting began, the board introduced me formally. They spoke about my work, my programs, the improvements I had made, and the respect I had earned from staff across the hospital. When they finished, Margaret cleared her throat. I wasn't aware we were considering someone so new to major leadership roles, she said, choosing her words carefully. This position requires experience. Before I could respond, one of the senior board members spoke up. Ava has already exceeded expectations in every area we've assigned her. Her leadership is exactly why we recommended her. Another added, her programs have had the most consistent success rate we've seen in years. Margaret's face tightened. She tried again, asking pointed questions about budgeting, crisis management, donor relations. But each time I answered calmly, directly, and with confidence earned through real work, not family connections. Her attempts to undermine me only made her look desperate. Then, halfway through the meeting, another familiar face walked in. Ethan. He looked tired, thinner, and like someone who had been carrying too much anger and regret. He glanced around the room, then saw me, and his expression changed instantly. Shock, guilt, and something close to regret washed over him. But I stayed focused on my notes, giving no reaction. He took a seat next to Margaret. I noticed he wasn't wearing a ring. The meeting continued, and I presented my proposals clearly and professionally. People listened, really listened. Not because of my background, not because of my connections, but because I had earned their attention. During a break, Margaret approached me. She tried to speak casually, but the strain in her voice was clear. I didn't realize you were involved at this level, she said. I smiled politely. I've worked hard for it. Her eyes flickered with something sharp, something unsure. For the first time, she wasn't looking down at me. She was looking at someone she underestimated, and now couldn't avoid. Ethan didn't approach me at all. He just watched from a distance, looking like he didn't know how to step into a world where I no longer needed him. By the end of the meeting, the air had shifted. I wasn't the outsider anymore. I wasn't the girl they whispered about or dismissed. I was the professional they relied on. And as I walked out of the boardroom, I realized something powerful. The woman Margaret once tried to push out of their world had risen higher than she ever imagined. And I wasn't done yet. Ava continues her work quietly, focusing on the tasks the foundation has given her. But as she goes through the financial records, she notices numbers that do not make sense. Budgets are stretched without clear reasons. Funds are moved into areas that have no proper explanation, and some reports look intentionally altered. She double-checks everything, making sure she isn't misunderstanding. The more she looks, the clearer it becomes. Something is wrong, and it all points back to Margaret's management. Ava does not panic. Instead, she gathers every document, organizes the evidence, and prepares a clear report. She knows this is serious, so she presents everything directly to the board. Her explanation is calm and professional. She doesn't accuse anyone emotionally. She simply shows the facts as they are. The board listens carefully, and they appreciate how honestly and responsibly she handled the situation. When Margaret hears about the audit findings, she reacts with the same attitude she used to show Ava in the past. She tries to twist the story and claim Ava misunderstood the finances. When that doesn't work, she attempts to shift the blame entirely, suggesting that Ava is the one causing trouble. She tries to speak with authority, but this time the board does not accept her words blindly. Ava stands firm. She answers every question with confidence, backing up each point with evidence. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't get emotional, and doesn't argue. Her calmness only highlights Margaret's desperation. The board members exchange looks, and it's clear to everyone that Ava has handled the matter with full professionalism, while Margaret is scrambling to protect herself. The shift is subtle but unmistakable. The board no longer sees Margaret as the stable leader she once pretended to be. Instead, they recognize Ava's integrity and reliability. For the first time, Margaret realizes she cannot push Ava aside or silence her like before. The power she once used to control every room is slipping away, and Ava isn't even trying to fight her. She is simply doing her job the right way. This moment marks the beginning of a change Margaret never expected. Ava's truth, backed by solid evidence, becomes stronger than any excuse Margaret tries to make. And for the first time, the board starts questioning Margaret's decisions, opening the door to consequences she can no longer escape. The board studies every part of the report Ava gave them, and after a long discussion, they make a firm decision. Margaret is asked to step down from her leadership role while the investigation continues. The announcement hits her harder than she expected. She cannot believe that the same woman she once dismissed and insulted is now the reason she no longer has control. The board does not raise their voices or argue with her. They simply state the decision with the same professionalism Ava showed them. Margaret realizes the respect in the room has shifted, and it is no longer toward her. Ethan hears about everything and tries to use the moment to reconnect with Ava. He approaches her quietly, sounding tired and regretful. He apologizes for the choices he made and for the pain he caused her. For a second, he almost looks like the person he used to be, but Ava is not moved the way she once might have been. She listens without interrupting, allowing him to speak freely. When she finally answers, her voice is gentle but firm. She tells him she has healed from the past and grown beyond it. She no longer carries anger, but she also has no space in her life to return to what once hurt her. She wishes him peace and recovery, but she makes it clear that her path no longer includes him. There is no bitterness in her tone, only closure. The board soon gathers again to finalize their next steps for the foundation. They review Ava's work, her professionalism, and the trust she has built with everyone. After a unanimous vote, they appoint her as the new chair of the Caldwell Foundation. The room fills with quiet approval as Ava accepts the role with calm confidence. She doesn't celebrate loudly. She simply acknowledges the responsibility and promises to lead with transparency and respect. This moment becomes the turning point for everyone involved. Margaret sits on the outside looking in, forced to face the consequences she never thought would reach her. Ethan walks away understanding that apologies do not rebuild broken trust. And Ava steps forward into a position she earned through integrity, strength, and patience, the same qualities others once overlooked. Ava receives an invitation from the board for a formal dinner at the Caldwell estate. It is meant to honor the foundation's new direction, and as chair, she is expected to lead the evening. She arrives calmly, dressed with the confidence she has earned through years of hard work. The staff welcomes her with respect, something she never experienced in this house before. When she enters the grand dining room, she notices the long, polished wooden table, the same table where Margaret once looked down on her and made her feel small. This time, Ava is guided to the seat at the head of the table. She sits there quietly, not overwhelmed, not emotional. She simply feels steady. The board members take their places, speaking to her with warmth and admiration. The room that once witnessed her humiliation now reflects her strength. A few minutes later, Margaret enters. She expects to be greeted the way she always was, but instead she stops as soon as she sees who occupies the head chair. Her face stiffens, then falters. The shock is clear. The one woman she pushed away, insulted, and underestimated now holds the highest authority in the room. Margaret tries to regain her composure, but the shift in power is too obvious to hide. Ava doesn't react with pride or spite. She doesn't smirk, she doesn't look away, and she doesn't remind Margaret of the past. She simply offers a polite nod, the same courtesy she gives everyone else. Her victory needs no loud statement. It is already written in the way the board listens to her, the way the room feels balanced around her leadership, and the way Margaret quietly takes a seat like any other guest, no longer in control. As the dinner begins, Ava leads the conversation with ease and grace. She discusses future plans for the hospital, upcoming programs, and the foundation's goals. Everyone pays attention when she speaks. Margaret watches silently, realizing this moment will stay with her far longer than any argument or confrontation. Ava's strength is not in defeating anyone, but in becoming someone they can no longer overshadow. By the time the dinner ends, the atmosphere is filled with respect, not tension. Ava walks out of the estate with a calm heart, knowing she never had to fight loudly for her victory. Her success, her dignity, and her growth speak louder than anything she could have said. It becomes clear to everyone, including those who once doubted her, that the best revenge truly is rising so high that the past can no longer reach you. Looking back, Ava could see how far she had come. The journey had been painful, full of moments where she felt small, unheard, and unworthy. Margaret's words, Ethan's silence, and the betrayal she endured had left marks. But those marks became reminders of how much she could endure and still keep moving forward. Each heartbreak, each disappointment, had taught her something about herself, about patience, strength, and the importance of staying true to her own values. Ava never set out to hurt anyone. She didn't plan revenge or wait for the perfect moment to strike back. Instead, she focused on herself. She studied, worked harder, and kept her integrity intact. She nurtured her skills, built trust with people who mattered, and proved her worth through action, not words. Slowly, the world shifted in her favor. Opportunities appeared, doors opened, and she stepped into roles that no one had expected she could handle. The power she gained wasn't about humiliating Margaret or proving Ethan wrong. It was about becoming the person she had always wanted to be, capable, respected, and independent. The strength she carried wasn't loud or aggressive. It was quiet, steady, and undeniable. She realized that true success wasn't about fighting others. It was about growing into a version of herself that commands respect naturally. Ava also learned a valuable lesson. The most powerful revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the person they doubted, the person they underestimated, the person they never imagined could rise above their expectations. That transformation doesn't rely on others' failures. It comes from your own determination, resilience, and courage. Sitting at the head of the table, leading with confidence and grace, Ava finally understood the full meaning of her journey. She didn't destroy Margaret or Ethan. She simply became someone whose place at the table could never be questioned. The victory wasn't in retaliation. It was in the quiet strength she cultivated, the skills she honed, and the respect she earned through hard work and integrity. Ava smiled to herself, thinking about how far she had come from the nervous young woman who once entered the Caldwell home unsure of her place. She had learned to trust herself, to value her own path, and to embrace the strength she had built from her pain. Every challenge, every betrayal, every moment of doubt had led her to this point. And with that, she knew the story wasn't just hers. It was a reminder for anyone who had been underestimated, judged, or pushed aside. Growth, perseverance, and self-respect are stronger than any insult, betrayal, or humiliation. "I didn't destroy them," Ava whispered quietly. "I just became someone whose place at the table no one can question anymore." Her journey ended not with bitterness, but with empowerment, proving that rising above, rather than striking back, is the most lasting and meaningful victory anyone can achieve.